My GPS didn't take me home. It took me to the place where I would be buried. I didn't understand that at first. I was just driving like any other night, tired, distracted, thinking about nothing important. The kind of night that should disappear into memory. No warning signs, no dramatic music, no sense that anything was about to change, just the quiet hum of the engine, the faint glow of the dashboard, and the steady rhythm of the road stretching ahead. I had been out later than usual. A long day, a normal day, the kind of day that ends with you wanting nothing more than your own bed and silence. I remember passing the last familiar intersection near my neighborhood. The gas station on the corner, the flickering sign that always buzzed, the turn I'd made 1,000 times. Home was only a few minutes away. That's what I thought. Then the route changed. No warning, no mistake, just a smooth recalculation as if it had been waiting for the right moment. The blue line on the screen shifted, bent away from the streets I knew, curving toward roads I'd never taken. At first I assumed it was traffic, construction, some harmless reroute. Technology does that sometimes, but something about the way it happened felt too clean, too intentional. I hadn't touched the screen, I hadn't entered a new destination, I hadn't asked it to take me anywhere. Yet it was taking me somewhere anyway. Then the voice spoke, calm, automatic, emotionless. In 800 feet, arrive at your destination. I remember laughing under my breath, a small, confused sound. Because that didn't make sense. Arrive at your destination? What destination? I glanced down at the GPS again. No address was entered, no pin dropped. Nothing, just the moving arrow that represented my car. And a route that had decided itself. My hands tightened around the wheel. The road ahead was empty. Too empty. Streetlights thinning out, houses fading into darkness, and that voice continued, guiding me like it always had. In 600 feet, arrive at your destination. The calmness of it unsettled me. It didn't sound wrong. It didn't sound broken. It sounded perfectly normal, like it was guiding me to a grocery store. Like it was guiding me to a friend's house, like it wasn't leading me away from everything familiar. I looked up. The streets were changing, the sidewalks were narrower, the buildings were fewer. The neighborhood felt older, quieter, and as if the city had simply stopped paying attention to this part of town. I should have turned around right then. That would have been the sensible thing, the safe thing. But I didn't. Because my brain was still searching for an explanation that made this ordinary, still trying to fold it into something that made sense. And then I looked down again, expecting an address, a street name, something normal. But what I saw made my chest lock up. The destination label wasn't a place I recognized. It wasn't even a place that should exist on a map. It read, Gravesite Reserved. I stared at it, blinking hard, waiting for the words to change. They didn't. Gravesite, reserved, reserved. Like someone had booked it, like someone had planned ahead. For me, a cold pressure spread through my arms, my mouth went dry. My thoughts slowed as if my mind couldn't decide whether to panic or deny what it was seeing. I whispered without meaning to. What? The GPS did not respond. It simply continued. In 400 feet, arrive at your destination. I felt my breathing turn shallow. The car suddenly seemed too small. The darkness outside pressed closer against the windows. And that was when one question rose above everything else. How could a GPS know where someone will be buried before they're even dead? I told myself it was a glitch. It had to be. A corrupted map label, some bizarre database error. Maybe someone had named a business gravesite as a joke. Maybe it was a prank location. Maybe. But the word reserved ruined all of those explanations. Reserved meant intention. Reserved meant someone had claimed it. Reserved meant it wasn't random. The voice spoke again. In 300 feet, arrive at your destination. The road curved gently left. Trees began to appear along the edges, their branches hanging over the street like dark ribs. The houses were gone now. No porch lights, no parked cars, no life. Only road, only night, only that screen glowing quietly beside me. I reached for my phone, needing to ground myself in something real. I tapped the screen. No service, no bars. Just that empty, useless symbol. I tried again. Nothing. A nervous laugh escaped me, sharp and ugly. Of course, I muttered, because somehow even that felt like part of it. As if this place existed outside the normal web of connection, outside the part of the world where you could call someone and say, hey, something weird is happening. The GPS continued unbothered. In 200 feet, arrive at your destination. My knuckles were white against the steering wheel. I kept checking the rearview mirror. The road behind me was dark. No headlights, no movement, just the faint suggestion of the path I'd come from. And for the first time, I realized something that made my stomach drop. I didn't know how to get back. Not really, not from here. Not without the GPS. Because I had followed it without thinking. Turn after turn, street after street. Like a person walking deeper into a forest while staring only at the ground. The car rolled forward. And then I saw it. A sign, old wood. Paint peeling away. The letters were faded but readable. Cemetery Road. My throat tightened. My foot eased off the accelerator. The tires whispered against the pavement. The GPS spoke again. In 100 feet, arrive at your destination. No, I said aloud this time, a real word, a real refusal, but my voice sounded small inside the car, or by the road narrowed. The streetlights disappeared entirely. Ahead, the pavement ended. Gravel began. And beyond that, a gate. Iron, black. Standing open just slightly, as if someone had left it that way on purpose. The entrance to a cemetery. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it was shaking my ribs. I stopped the car just before the gate. The headlights washed over the first few rows of headstones, pale shapes in the dark, silent, still, waiting. The GPS was quiet for a moment, then softly it announced, "Arrive at your destination." I didn't move. I sat there, frozen, staring through the windshield. My hands were still gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping me anchored. The screen refreshed. The map zoomed in. A single pin dropped deep inside the cemetery grounds, right in the center. One plot, one marked point. And beneath it, text appeared. A name. At first, my brain couldn't process what I was looking at. It was just letters, just a label. Then it clicked. My full name. First, middle, last, spelled perfectly. I couldn't breathe. The world narrowed to that glowing screen, to those words, to the impossible certainty of them. My voice came out as a rasp. That's not possible. I stared harder, as if I could force it to change, but it didn't. The GPS wasn't wrong. It wasn't confused. It was precise, as if it had always known. The car idled at the entrance. The cemetery stretched ahead, swallowed by darkness beyond the reach of my headlights. And in that moment, the question wasn't just how, it was why. Why would something like this exist? Why would my name be here? Why would it be reserved? I sat perfectly still. Then my phone buzzed. One vibration, sharp, sudden, impossible. Because I still had no service. I looked down. A notification, a message, no sender, just an empty line where a name should have been. The text was short, 6 words. You weren't supposed to see. My skin went cold. I read it again and again, as if repetition would make it less real. It didn't. Another buzz, another message. Turn off the car. My throat tightened. I looked up quickly, scanning the cemetery. Nothing moved. No figures, no sound, just rows of stones and dark trees. The engine hummed beneath me, a small, fragile sound of life. I didn't respond. I didn't know what to do. Then the GPS spoke again, but this time it wasn't the same. The tone was lower, closer, almost like it wasn't coming from the device anymore, but from somewhere inside the car. Do you want to know when it happens? My blood turned to ice. The screen flickered. The map vanished, and in its place, a countdown began. 0059, 0058, 0057. 1 minute. 1 minute until what? I stared, breath locked in my chest. The car doors were still locked. My hands were shaking. The cemetery was still silent. But the air felt different now, as if something had shifted, as if the moment I saw my name, something else became aware that I was here. The timer kept ticking. 0042, 0041, 0040, and then, somewhere beyond the headstones, a shape moved. Slow, deliberate, not rushing, because it didn't need to. It already knew where I would end up, reserved, waiting, right there, in the dark. And the countdown continued. The countdown continued. 032, 031, 030. I couldn't move. I couldn't even blink properly. My eyes stayed locked on that screen, on those numbers falling away like sand. And then, my phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't a message. It was the screen lighting up on its own, a notification from the GPS app. Just one line, "Thank you for updating." My breath caught, because that was real. That was earlier today. The update, I remembered it. Of course I did. It had seemed so harmless, so ordinary. Just another pop-up on a busy morning. Just another piece of technology asking for permission. I had tapped install without thinking, like everyone does. The timer hit 0018, 0017, and I realized, sitting there at the edge of that cemetery, that this didn't start here. It started hours ago. And it started long before the gate, long before the gravel road, long before my name appeared on the screen. It started with a normal day, a normal drive, a normal decision, the kind you don't remember making until it's too late. Earlier that night, everything had been painfully ordinary. I had left work late, not because anything dramatic happened, just deadlines, emails, the slow grind of a day that refused to end. By the time I finally shut down my computer, the office was nearly empty. The cleaning crew was already moving through the halls. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, making everything look pale and tired. Outside, the rain had started. Not a storm, just a steady drizzle that turned the streets glossy under the street lamps. The kind of rain that makes the city feel quieter, muted, or like someone turned the volume down on the world. I remember pulling my jacket tighter as I walked to my car. The parking lot was half lit, half shadowed. Raindrops tapped against the windshield as I climbed inside. I sat there for a moment before starting the engine, just breathing, just listening to the rain. Nothing felt wrong, nothing felt strange. I was thinking about simple things. Dinner, a shower, sleep, the normal comfort of getting home. Then my phone lit up in its holder. Low battery, 9%. I frowned. I'd forgotten to charge it at my desk. I plugged it into the car charger, but the cable was old. The connection was loose. The percentage didn't move. It just sat there, dying slowly. I sighed and opened my GPS anyway. Not because I didn't know the way home, but because driving at night in the rain always made traffic unpredictable. Accidents, closures, construction. The GPS was just insurance, a small convenience. A modern habit. The screen loaded. My location appeared. The familiar blue dot. I typed in home. The route came up instantly. 22 minutes. Simple. Normal. And then I noticed something small at the bottom of the screen. A banner. GPS app updated successfully. New features enabled. I barely registered it. I remembered the update prompt earlier that morning. I'd been half asleep, thumb scrolling through notifications. Update available, bug fixes, improved accuracy. I clicked yes. Who wouldn't? It wasn't like I was installing some unknown software. It was navigation, maps, something you trust without even realizing you trust it. I backed out of the lot and merged onto the highway. Rain streaked across the glass. The wipers moved back and forth in a steady rhythm. The city blurred into reflections, headlights, taillights, neon signs smeared into soft lines of color. The radio played quietly, some late-night talk show. The host's voice filling the silence. Everything felt normal, comfortably dull. The kind of drive where your mind drifts. I remember thinking about how tired I was, how my shoulders ached, how tomorrow would be another long day. Just life, just routine. The GPS guided me smoothly. In 2 miles, keep right. I followed. In 1 mile, take exit 14. I followed. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. The road stretched ahead, wet and shining under the overhead lights. Cars passed occasionally, spraying mist behind them. Then my phone flashed again. Battery, 6%. I muttered under my breath. The charger wasn't working. The cable must have been loose. I adjusted it, pressing it in harder. For a moment, the charging icon appeared, then vanished again. I felt a flicker of annoyance, not fear. Just irritation. I couldn't have known what that low battery would mean later. How small inconveniences can become traps. The GPS continued. In 5 miles, take the next exit. I relaxed slightly. Home was close. Then a chime, a soft digital sound. The screen displayed a message. Faster route found. Beneath it, a button appeared. Accept, and before I could even react, the route changed. The blue line shifted, bent away from the highway, toward a smaller road, an unfamiliar road. I frowned. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't remember pressing anything. I hadn't hit accept. I hadn't even touched the phone. Yet the GPS spoke immediately, calm as ever. New route selected, saving 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Such a small thing. Such a normal thing. The kind of adjustment technology makes all the time. But something about it made me uneasy. Not because reroutes are rare, but because this one felt unsolicited. I glanced down. The banner was gone. The new route was already active. The next exit approached quickly. In 1 mile, I'd take the exit. I hesitated. I could ignore it. Stay on the highway. Go the way I knew, but the GPS had never been wrong before, and I was tired. And it was raining, and I didn't want to think. So I signaled and took the exit. The road immediately narrowed. The bright highway lights faded behind me. Now there were only scattered street lamps. The rain sounded louder here, more present. The wipers seemed to work harder. My headlights caught wet asphalt and dark trees beyond the shoulder. The GPS voice remained steady. In 2 miles, turn right. I drove on. The city began to thin out. Fewer buildings, fewer cars. The comfort of traffic disappeared. The silence grew. I turned the radio up slightly just to fill the space. Static crackled. The station faded. I adjusted the dial. Nothing but fuzz. And that was strange. I'd never lost signal here before. I tried another station, more static. The car felt suddenly isolated, like the world had pulled back. Battery, 4%. My phone was dying. The charger still wasn't working. I felt a sharper edge of worry now. Not panic, not yet. Just the awareness that I was relying on this device, and it was slipping away. The GPS spoke again. In 1 mile, continue straight. I swallowed. The road was almost empty now. No storefronts, no neighborhoods, just long stretches of wet pavement and trees. And then, another chime. Another message appeared. Faster route found. This time I stared at it. My hands tightened. Why does it keep doing that? I whispered. The button didn't wait. The route shifted again, automatically. No consent, no touch. Just decided. And the GPS voice followed instantly. Rerouting. My stomach turned. I slowed slightly, scanning the road. Where was it taking me? This wasn't the way home, not even close. I tried to cancel the navigation. My finger tapped the screen. Nothing happened. The app didn't respond. I tapped again. Still nothing. It was as if the GPS wasn't listening anymore, as if it wasn't a tool, but something else entirely. The voice spoke again, softer now, almost patient. In 800 feet, arrive at your destination. I frowned. Destination? What destination? I hadn't entered anything new. My heart began to pound. I glanced down at the screen, and that was when I saw it for the first time. The label. The words that didn't belong in any navigation system. Gravesite. Reserved. My breath caught. My mind refused it. No. No. That's not real. That's not possible. Yet it sat there, glowing calmly in the rain-dark car. Gravesite. Reserved. And the question came, sharp and unavoidable. Who changed the route? Because I didn't. And if I didn't, then something else did. The GPS spoke again. In 600 feet, arrive at your destination. And outside, the road kept narrowing, leading me somewhere I had never chosen, somewhere waiting, somewhere marked, somewhere already prepared. And the worst part was, everything about the night had started so normally, so realistically, so harmlessly. Just a late-night drive home, just rain on the highway, just a phone battery running low, just an app update earlier that day, just one small reroute that I never selected. And yet, it was taking me anyway, deeper, further, away, toward a place with my name on it. And the night was only beginning. The exit should have looped me back toward the city. That's what exits do. They take you off, and then they return you. But this one didn't. It carried me away. The road narrowed into something that barely felt maintained, the painted lane markers fading beneath the rain. The highway lights disappeared completely behind me. Now there was only the darkness ahead, broken by my headlights and the occasional weak street lamp that looked like it hadn't been replaced in years. The GPS remained calm. Too calm. In 2 miles, continue straight. I drove on, trying to convince myself this was still normal. Trying to tell myself it was just an alternate route, a shortcut, a detour. But the landscape didn't match that story. The city was gone. The suburbs were gone. Even the familiar scattered businesses along the roadside had vanished. This was something else. Back roads, empty stretches of wet pavement bordered by trees that pressed close like walls. And then I noticed the street signs. At first it was subtle, a sign leaning slightly, the metal pole rusted. Then another, farther down, so faded I could barely read it. The letters looked old, not weathered by a few seasons, but by decades, as if these roads hadn't been updated in a very long time, and some signs weren't just faded, they were wrong. One of them hung crooked at an intersection, the name scratched out. Not vandalized, removed deliberately, like someone didn't want it to be seen. I slowed as I passed it, squinting through the rain. My headlights caught only fragments. CEM. Then nothing. And the rest of the letters were gone. The GPS voice spoke again. In 1 mile, turn right. I glanced down at the screen. The map was zoomed in closer now, showing only a thin line of road. No nearby businesses, no landmarks, no indication that this was part of any normal route home. It was like the GPS had narrowed my world to one instruction at a time. Just enough information to keep me moving. Nothing more. My phone buzzed faintly. Battery, 2%. I swallowed hard. If it died, I'd have nothing. No map, no calls, no way to check where I was. The cable still wasn't charging. I adjusted it again, harder. Nothing. The GPS spoke again, closer now. In 800 feet, turn right. The rain picked up slightly, tapping louder against the roof. The trees seemed taller here, older, and their branches reached over the road like they were trying to touch the car. I tried to focus on the logic. This had to connect somewhere. This had to lead back to civilization. But then I saw something that made my stomach tighten. A stop sign. Old, not just old, ancient. The red paint was almost brown. The edges were chipped, and beneath it, nailed into the same post, was another sign. A white rectangle, black lettering. Simple. It read, "No services ahead." That didn't make sense. No services. For how long? And why would a GPS route someone through an area like that at night? The voice spoke again. In 300 feet, turn right. I slowed at the intersection. There were no other cars, no lights in any direction, just wet road disappearing into blackness. I hesitated, my hands hovered over the wheel. And then the GPS voice changed. It didn't fully change, not enough that you'd notice immediately. Just a slight hitch, a faint distortion. It spoke again. Turn to now. The sound caught like a scratched record. My skin prickled. I stared at the device. GPS voices don't glitch. Not like that. Not in such a deliberate way. I turned right anyway, because what else could I do? The road became even narrower. Gravel appeared at the edges. My tires hissed over wet stone. The map on the screen looked wrong now. The road wasn't labeled. No name, just a line. As if the GPS was guiding me somewhere that wasn't meant to be navigated. I tried to cancel the route. My finger tapped the X. Nothing happened. I tapped again. The app didn't respond. The screen remained fixed, stubbornly guiding me forward. A pulse of irritation flared, then fear followed right behind it. "Okay," I muttered. "Enough." I pressed harder, swiping, trying to close it. Still nothing. The GPS voice spoke, perfectly calm again. In 1 mile, continue straight. My phone buzzed again. Battery, 1%. I felt my chest tighten. No, no, no. I held the cable in place with one hand, hoping it would catch. The battery icon flickered, still draining. The darkness outside seemed thicker now, as if the rain itself was swallowing the road. And then, the screen flashed, just once. Like a camera shutter, the map disappeared for half a second. When it returned, something new was on it. Not a road, not a pin. A message. Bold white letters across the screen. Do not stop. I stared. My breath caught. My hands went cold. For a moment I actually laughed, a short, nervous sound, because it was absurd. GPS apps don't do that. They don't send warnings. They don't issue commands. They don't speak like they know something you don't. I whispered aloud, more to myself than anything. "What is this?" The message stayed. Do not stop. The voice spoke again, softer, almost urgent. Continue. Straight. The tone was wrong. It wasn't the cheerful neutrality of a machine. It was something trying to sound neutral. Something mimicking. My nervous laugh died in my throat, because suddenly the question wasn't hypothetical anymore. It was immediate. Real. Is someone controlling it? My mind raced through possibilities. A hacker. A prank. some kind of malware from the update. But even those explanations felt weak. Because why this? Why me? And why here? The road ahead dipped slightly, descending into a stretch of trees so dense my headlights barely reached beyond them. The rain muffled everything. The world felt sealed, closed off. I checked the rearview mirror again. Nothing, just darkness behind. But then a faint shape appeared far back, a single pair of headlights. My breath caught. A car. I watched them carefully. And they weren't moving fast, they weren't passing. They were matching my speed. Following. The GPS voice glitched again, just slightly. Keep going. I felt my pulse spike. The message on the screen remained. Do not stop. I tightened my grip on the wheel. My thoughts spiraled into panic. If I stopped, what? Would the car behind stop too? Would someone step out? Was this a trap? Or was the warning for something else, something ahead? The road twisted sharply, the trees leaned closer. And then I saw another sign. This one was worse than the others. It was barely hanging on its post, twisted sideways. The letters were almost gone, but I could make out one word. Cemetery. My stomach dropped. No, I whispered. The GPS spoke immediately, as if it heard me. In 500 feet, arrive at your destination. Destination. That word again. I didn't want a destination. I wanted home. I wanted streetlights and people and noise. I wanted this to be over. My phone screen flickered. Battery, 0%. The device shut off. Black, gone. The only light now was the GPS itself, still glowing, still guiding, still alive. Even though my phone was dead, that made no sense. The GPS app should have died with it, but it didn't. The map stayed open, the route stayed active, the message stayed on screen. Do not stop. My mouth went dry. The car behind me was closer now, headlights brighter, too bright. I couldn't see the driver, just the glare. The GPS voice came again, quieter, distorted. Do not stop. The words were no longer an instruction, they were a warning. And then, the road opened suddenly into a clearing. My headlights swept across something pale and uneven. Rows, markers, stone. The entrance to a cemetery, the same iron gate standing open, waiting. The GPS spoke one final time in that calm, automated tone, arrive at your destination. And as I crossed the threshold, the car behind me turned off its headlights, instantly, completely, vanishing into the dark, leaving me alone, inside. The screen refreshed, the pin dropped again. Gravesite, reserved, and beneath it, my name. The air inside the car felt too still. The rain continued, tapping gently on the roof, and the message on the GPS changed one last time. 3 words, simple, cold. You are here. I sat frozen, staring at the glowing screen, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Because now there was no question left about whether something was wrong. The only question left was, what happens when you arrive? And why? Did it tell me not to stop? The cemetery should have been the end. That's what a destination is. The place you arrive, the place the journey stops. But when I crossed that gate, the GPS didn't stop guiding me. It didn't shut off. It didn't say, you have arrived, and fall silent like it always did. Instead, it stayed awake. The screen glowed brighter in the dark, almost harsh against the rain-stained windshield. The message still sat there for a moment. You are here. My hands trembled on the wheel, the car idled, the engine humming like a nervous heartbeat. Outside, the cemetery was nothing but rows of shadow and stone, swallowed by night beyond the reach of my headlights. I didn't get out. I couldn't. Because getting out would make it real in a way I wasn't ready for. Inside the car, I still had a barrier. Glass, metal, locks. Thin comforts, but comforts all the same. I swallowed hard and whispered, "This is a mistake." The GPS didn't respond. Rain tapped softly on the roof. The world felt suspended. Then, the route changed again. The blue line extended past the cemetery, past the plot pin, past the place marked with my name. The map pulled outward, showing a road continuing deeper into darkness. And the voice spoke, calm as ever. "In 2 miles, continue straight." I stared. Continue straight. My breath came shallow. Why was it still giving directions? Why was there a road past this? The cemetery road ahead wasn't paved anymore. It was dirt and gravel, disappearing between trees. No streetlights, no signs, just blackness. And yet the GPS acted like it was the most normal thing in the world. The screen flashed briefly. The volume icon appeared, and then the GPS volume increased on its own. The voice became louder, sharper, filling the car. "In 2 miles, continue straight." I flinched, instinctively reaching for the volume controls. I turned it down. The slider moved. For half a second, the voice softened. Then the slider moved back up by itself, as if something unseen had grabbed it. The volume climbed higher. I froze. My fingers hovered above the screen. That wasn't possible. Apps don't do that. Not without input, not without permission. The GPS spoke again, louder now. "Continue straight." The sound was too big in the confined space of the car, like someone speaking too close to your ear. The air felt different. Not just colder, but heavier, as if the temperature had dropped the moment I crossed that gate. I rubbed my hands together, trying to shake off the chill. My breath fogged faintly in front of me. The heater was still running. It shouldn't feel like this. I looked out through the windshield. The cemetery stretched behind me. Ahead, the road narrowed into a tunnel of trees. No streetlights, no houses, no glow of civilization, just darkness. A darkness that didn't look empty. It looked occupied. The GPS spoke again. "In 1 mile, turn left." My throat tightened. Turn left? Into what? There was nothing out there. I should have reversed. I should have driven back through the gate, back to the highway, back to anything normal. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, the gate was gone. I blinked hard, looked again. The entrance I had just driven through wasn't there. Only trees, only darkness. The cemetery behind me looked endless now, rows of stones fading into the night. My stomach dropped. No, that's not... I turned my head, twisting in my seat to look directly behind. Nothing. The gate had vanished, as if it had never existed. My pulse thundered. The GPS voice cut through the silence, louder than ever. "In 800 feet, turn left." I whispered, almost pleading, "I want to go home." The GPS paused, just for a beat. Then it spoke again, and what it said made my blood turn cold. "You missed this turn last time." I stopped breathing. The words didn't register at first. My brain rejected them. Last time? I stared at the screen. My hands were shaking. "I've never been here," I whispered. The GPS didn't correct itself. It didn't apologize. It didn't recalculate. It simply continued, and as if it had stated a fact. "In 600 feet, turn left." My mind raced. Last time? What last time? This was my first time on this road, my first time seeing that cemetery, my first time feeling this kind of fear settle into my bones. I reached for my phone without thinking. Then I remembered. It was dead. Black screen. No power. But the GPS was still running, still alive. That made no sense. With trembling fingers, I pressed the side button anyway. The screen stayed dark. I pressed again. Nothing. Then, without warning, the phone lit up. Not the normal boot screen, not the battery icon. It lit up instantly, as if it had never been off. My breath caught. The GPS app was open, already open. A menu I had never clicked sat on the screen. Trip history. I frowned. Trip history. My thumb hovered. I didn't remember that feature. Slowly, I tapped. The screen loaded, and what appeared made my stomach twist violently. Trip history, destination, gravesite, reserved status, completed date. 3 weeks ago, I stared. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Completed? 3 weeks ago? That wasn't possible. I hadn't been here 3 weeks ago. I hadn't even known this place existed. My thumb scrolled downward. Another entry, same destination, same route. Status, completed date, 4 weeks ago. Another, completed date, 6 weeks ago again, and again, and again. The same route repeated like a loop, dozens of entries, each one stamped with completion, each one ending at the same point. That cemetery, that plot, my plot. My mouth went dry. I whispered, no, no, no. My thumb scrolled faster, frantic now. The list kept going. Months, nearly a year. Always the same, always completed, always ending at gravesite, reserved. It was like the GPS had been taking me here over and over, without me knowing, or worse, like it had been recording trips that hadn't happened yet. I felt dizzy, my vision blurred. The GPS voice spoke again, louder, closer. In 400 feet, turn left. I looked up sharply. The road ahead was darker now. No streetlights at all, not even the weak yellow glow from before. Just my headlights cutting a narrow tunnel through blackness. And the trees seemed to lean inward. My skin crawled. I glanced back at the phone. The trip history entry at the top suddenly highlighted itself. A small play icon appeared beside it. Replay route. My finger hovered. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to know what that meant. But before I could stop myself, the route replay started on its own. The blue line pulsed. A small dot began moving along it. Not my car, not my current position. Another dot, following the route. A playback. Like watching footage. The dot traveled smoothly, turn by turn, toward the cemetery, toward the reserved plot. And then, the dot stopped, right at the pin. The screen displayed, arrival confirmed. Then a new line appeared beneath it. Cause of death. Pending. I froze. My breath left me in a silent gasp. Cause of death? No. No GPS app shows that. No map has that. My hands began to shake uncontrollably. The voice spoke again, softer now, almost conversational. You were late last time. I stared at the screen, whispering, "Who are you?" The GPS volume rose again, without permission. The voice filled the car, calm and certain. In 200 feet, turn left. My eyes snapped up. The turn was coming, a narrow dirt path leading into thicker trees. No sign, no marker, just darkness splitting open. The GPS knew it. The GPS wanted it. And somewhere deep in my gut, I understood something I didn't want to understand. This wasn't giving me directions. It was repeating something. Something that had already happened. Or something that was supposed to happen. The trip history wasn't a record of where I'd been. It was a record of where I was going to end, over and over, until it finally got it right. My hands tightened on the wheel. The turn approached. The GPS spoke one last time, impossibly calm. Turn left, like you did before. And as my headlights swept across the mouth of that dark path, I saw something standing just beyond the tree line. Still, waiting. As if it recognized me, as if it had been here. Every time. The figure beyond the trees didn't move. Neither did I. For a long moment, the world held its breath. Rain fell softly, but even that sound felt distant now, like it belonged to another place. My headlights reached only so far. They caught the edge of the dirt path, the wet leaves, the thick trunks of the trees, and just enough of that shape to confirm it was there. Human height. Still, facing me. I couldn't see a face, only the suggestion of one. My fingers trembled against the wheel. The GPS spoke again, louder, insistent. "Turn left." I whispered, barely audible, "No." The voice did not argue. It didn't need to. It simply waited, patient as gravity. The countdown from earlier was gone, but something else had replaced it. A new certainty. A feeling that time was no longer mine. I kept staring at the figure. My pulse hammered, and then slowly, it stepped back. Not away, not retreating, just withdrawing into the darkness between the trees, like it had only needed to be seen, like it had only needed me to know it was real. My breath came out in a shaky exhale. I turned the wheel sharply, not left, not toward that path. I swung the car forward, continuing straight, deeper down the cemetery road. Gravel popped under the tires. The GPS was silent for a moment. Then, rerouting. The word was smooth, automatic. But it landed like a threat. The map shifted instantly. The blue line bent to match my refusal, as if it had expected it, as if it already had a second plan. The voice returned, calm as ever. "In 1 mile, continue straight." I swallowed hard. The trees thickened. The road narrowed. Not gradually. Not naturally. It was as if the world itself was tightening around me. Branches leaned close enough that they scraped faintly against the roof of the car. The darkness beyond my headlights felt solid, like a wall. I tried to keep my breathing steady. Tried to focus on something normal, the speedometer, the sound of the wipers, the faint warmth of the heater. But even those comforts felt wrong now, because the air was colder, not just outside, inside. My hands were cold on the wheel, my breath fogged again, the GPS volume rose another notch by itself. I flinched. Continue straight. The voice was too loud now, too present, like someone sitting in the passenger seat, speaking inches from my ear. I reached for the volume slider again. It moved, then snapped back up. I whispered, "Stop." The GPS did not. The road curved. The cemetery stones disappeared behind me. Now it was only trees, only darkness, only the narrow ribbon of road ahead. And then I noticed something that made my stomach twist. There were no intersections, no side streets, no driveways, just forward, always forward. Like this road didn't connect to anything else, like it existed only to lead somewhere. My phone, impossibly still powered, showed no signal, no bars, no emergency call option, just emptiness. The kind of emptiness you only see when you are far outside the reach of anyone. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The darkness behind me was complete. No headlights, no reflection. And then the thought came, slow and horrible. There are no other cars, not a single one. No distant traffic, no passing headlights. No sign that anyone else is awake in the world. It was like I had driven out of reality and into a place that was waiting only for me. The GPS spoke again. In 800 feet. Stop. I blinked. Stop. My grip tightened. Stop where? The road ahead dipped slightly, and my headlights caught something up ahead. A structure, small, low, a canopy. Old gas pumps, an abandoned gas station sitting alone in the trees like a forgotten prop from another decade. The sign above it was broken, half hanging. The letters were missing. The pumps were rusted, their screens smashed. The building's windows were black. No lights, no life, just wet decay under the rain. My heart pounded harder. The GPS repeated, louder, "Stop here." I stared at it. My voice came out shaking. No. The GPS didn't respond. It didn't ask. It didn't explain. It simply recalculated instantly. The route shifted. The blue line bent around the gas station. And then, The screen flashed violently, white glare filling the car. A message appeared in bold letters. "You can't miss it this time." My breath caught. This time. The words struck deeper than anything else, because they weren't guiding me like a map. They were speaking like someone who had watched me fail before, like someone who had seen other attempts, other nights, other versions of this. The road narrowed even more, squeezing between trees. I drove past the gas station, refusing to slow down. But as I passed, my headlights swept across the building's front wall, and I saw something that nearly made me slam the brakes. A poster, faded, half torn, taped crookedly to the glass of the front door. At first, it looked like an old missing person notice. Then my eyes focused, and my stomach dropped. It was my face, a photograph of me. The same photo from my driver's license, the same stiff expression. Beneath it, barely readable in the rain-streaked glare, "Missing last seen." Tonight I felt a sound rise in my throat, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. I kept driving. I didn't stop. I couldn't. The GPS spoke again, calm, almost satisfied. "In 1 mile, arrive at your destination." Destination, always destination. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep the car centered. The road was becoming unnatural now. Me too narrow, too tight. The trees pressed closer than they should have been able to. The branches overhead formed a tunnel, and the darkness ahead seemed to swallow the reach of my headlights faster than it should. I glanced down at the map. The road wasn't labeled. There were no nearby streets, no town names, no highway markers. Just a single thin line floating in blank space, as if the GPS itself didn't know where this was, only where it ended. I whispered, more to myself than anything, "Is this road even real?" The GPS answered immediately, not with directions, with something else. A soft chime, a new message. "Keep going." My mouth went dry. I tried to turn around, just to test it, just to see if the road behind me still existed. I eased the wheel slightly, searching for a widening, but there was none. Either the road was too narrow, the trees too close. And when I looked back again, the gas station was gone. I blinked hard. It should have been visible behind me. At least the canopy, at least the broken sign. But there was nothing. Only trees. Only darkness. As if I had never passed it at all. My pulse spiked. No. No. The road felt endless now, like it was stretching, like it was rewriting itself. I checked the GPS again. The route line was still there, still guiding, still certain. And then the voice spoke again, lower, closer. "You can't miss it this time. Not automated, not neutral, not a tool. A reminder, a promise." My throat tightened. There was no signal, no other cars, no landmarks that stayed. No way back. Only forward. Only the road that might not even exist outside of this moment, and outside of whatever this was. And the most horrifying realization settled into me like ice. If this road isn't real, then where am I? And if it is real, why does it feel like I'm the only person who has ever been allowed to drive it? The GPS chimed again. "In 500 feet, stop." Ahead, the darkness opened slightly. Something waited beyond the trees. Something the GPS had been leading me toward again and again. Something I apparently couldn't miss this time. And my foot, trembling, hovered over the brake. Because I knew whatever came next would not be ordinary. The road kept tightening, the trees kept leaning, the darkness kept pressing closer, and the GPS kept counting down the distance with the calm certainty of something that had done this before. "In 500 feet, stop." My hands were slick with sweat. My throat was so dry it hurt to swallow. The car felt like the only solid thing left in a world that was quietly changing shape around me. I stared at the road ahead, my headlights tunneling into the black. And finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. My voice cracked as I spoke aloud, not to anyone in particular, not even sure why I was speaking at all. "What is happening?" For a moment there was only the sound of rain, the wipers, the engine. Then the GPS responded, not with a direction, not with a distance, with an answer. "You already know." I froze. My entire body locked. That wasn't possible. GPS systems don't answer questions. They don't listen. They don't understand. They don't speak back. My heart slammed against my ribs. The car drifted slightly, tires brushing the edge of gravel. I jerked the wheel back, almost overcorrecting. The headlights swung wildly, illuminating tree trunks in sudden flashes. My breath came fast. "No," I whispered. "No, that's not..." The GPS cut in smoothly, louder. "In 300 feet, turn right." I stared ahead. There was no right turn, nothing but trees, nothing but road. My pulse spiked. "There is no turn," I muttered. The GPS repeated slower, "Turn right." My hands trembled. The road continued straight. Then, as if the world was waiting for the command, a gap appeared, a narrow path splitting off into darkness. It hadn't been visible a second ago. It was just there now. My breath caught. I stared, horrified, as the GPS spoke again. "Turn. Now." I didn't. I couldn't. My mind screamed that it wasn't real, that roads don't appear, that turns don't materialize out of nothing. I drove past it. The GPS was silent for 2 beats. Then, rerouting. The map shifted instantly. The blue line bent again, and the voice spoke, softer now, almost disappointed. "In 500 feet, turn left." I swallowed hard. My eyes flicked up. There was no left turn either, just trees packed so tightly they looked like a wall. My breathing became shallow. The GPS was giving directions before the road existed. Before it appeared, before it was possible. I whispered, shaking, "How are you doing that?" The GPS didn't answer. It didn't need to. Because another turn appeared. A left path cutting into the forest like a wound. The car slowed involuntarily. My foot hovered over the brake. I felt trapped between refusing and obeying. The GPS spoke again, quieter, almost intimate. "Don't disappoint them again." My blood turned cold. Them. The word hung in the air like a presence. I stared at the screen. "Them," I whispered. The GPS didn't clarify, it only guided. "In 200 feet, continue straight." But the road ahead was barely a road anymore. It was narrowing into something that felt less like pavement and more like a corridor. The trees were too close. Their branches scraped the sides of the car now. A faint screeching sound that made my skin crawl. I turned the wheel slightly, trying to keep centered. My knuckles ached from gripping so hard. Then I heard something else. Not the branches, not the rain, something outside. A faint sound, rhythmic. Scraping, like something dragging along the ground. I froze, listening. The sound continued, slow, deliberate, keeping pace. My breath caught. It wasn't behind me, it wasn't ahead. It was beside me, as if something was walking just beyond the passenger side window, matching my speed. Step, scrape, step, scrape. My eyes flicked toward the dark glass. I couldn't see anything. Only my own reflection. Only the faint glow of the dashboard. But the sound remained. And then softly, almost playfully, the GPS whispered, "They're walking with you." My stomach lurched. I snapped my head forward, panic surging. "No, stop!" The car swerved slightly. Gravel spit under the tires. I fought the wheel, breathing hard. A heart hammering. The scraping continued, closer now, right there, just outside. I forced myself to look again, slowly toward the passenger window. Rain streaked down the glass, darkness pressed against it, and then, for the briefest second, a shape moved alongside the car, not reflected, not imagined. Something tall, too close, keeping pace effortlessly. My breath stopped. I jerked my eyes forward again. The GPS spoke calmly, as if narrating a documentary. In 100 feet. Stop. I whispered, voice trembling. Who are they? The GPS paused, then answered soft and certain. The ones waiting. My skin went ice cold. Waiting. At the gravesite, at the destination, at the place reserved. The scraping sound shifted, moving toward the back of the car now, like footsteps circling. My chest tightened, and I could barely breathe. The GPS whispered again, "Don't make them come closer." Tears pricked at my eyes, not from sadness but from raw fear. "This isn't real," I gasped. The GPS replied instantly, "It's real enough." The road ahead dipped sharply. My headlights swept over something pale, a clearing. And in the center, something that looked like a gathering. Not cars, not people clearly, just shapes, still, waiting. My foot hovered over the brake. The GPS volume rose again, filling the car. "Stop here." The scraping outside ceased abruptly. Silence, the kind of silence that means something has stopped moving, because it has arrived. And then the GPS whispered, so softly I almost didn't hear it. "They remember you." My breath shook. My hands trembled violently. The question burned in my mind. Louder than anything else, who is them? And why does it sound like I've been here before? Outside, beyond the headlights, the shapes remained still. Waiting, as if expecting me to finally do what I was brought here to do, and the GPS, glowing patiently, spoke one last instruction: "Step out." The GPS said it so calmly, "Step out," as if it were asking me to grab groceries, as if it weren't asking me to leave the only barrier between myself and whatever was waiting beyond the glass. My hands stayed locked on the steering wheel. My chest rose and fell in shallow, trembling breaths. The clearing ahead was pale in my headlights. The shapes at the edge of the light didn't move. They didn't rush. They didn't need to. The silence outside felt deliberate, like the world was holding itself still. The GPS repeated, louder, "Stop here." My foot hovered over the brake. Every instinct screamed at me to keep driving, to press the accelerator until the road ended or the car did. But the road felt like it belonged to the GPS now, like it wasn't mine to choose anymore. And then, without meaning to, my foot pressed down. The brake pedal sank, the car slowed, gravel crunched, the engine idled, and I stopped. The moment the car came to rest, the air changed. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't sudden. It was worse than that. It was like the world simply noticed. The rain seemed quieter, the trees seemed closer, the darkness seemed to lean in. The GPS screen glowed, waiting. My hands trembled as they loosened on the wheel. I whispered, barely audible, "No, I'm not doing this." The GPS didn't argue, it didn't threaten. It just sat there, patient. Then my phone buzzed softly. Once, the screen flickered. The GPS app was still open. The map was still there. For a second, I thought nothing else would happen. Then the screen went black, completely. No route, no blue line, no destination, just darkness. My breath caught. And then, a single line of text appeared. White letters on a black screen, simple. Cold. "Look up." My stomach dropped so hard it felt like the air left my body. I stared at the words. My hands began to shake uncontrollably. The car felt too small now. The command sat there like an order you couldn't refuse. Look up. I didn't want to. Every part of me understood that whatever was above my line of sight, was something I couldn't unsee. I swallowed hard, my eyes lifted slowly from the phone, to the windshield, to the clearing beyond my headlights, to the darkness ahead. At first, I saw nothing, just trees, just wet ground, just shadows. Then my headlights caught something wooden, a sign, old, rough planks nailed together. It stood just beyond the reach of the gravel road, at the edge of the clearing, and the letters were painted in white, large enough to read from here. My breath stopped. It said, "Welcome back." For a moment, my mind refused to understand. Welcome back. Back to what? Back from where? I had never been here. I had never seen this place. Yet the sign greeted me like a returning guest. My skin prickled. The GPS screen remained black except for that one line. Look up. I couldn't look away from the sign. And then I saw what was nailed beneath it. A piece of paper. Laminated, rain-speckled, flapping slightly in the faint breeze. A missing person poster, the kind you see on telephone poles, the kind you ignore because it belongs to someone else's tragedy. This one didn't. My headlights illuminated the photograph, and my blood turned to ice. It was me. My face. The same stiff driver's license photo. The same eyes, the same expression. Underneath bold letters, missing person. I couldn't breathe. My hands gripped the steering wheel again, as if I could anchor myself. No. The poster didn't belong here. It couldn't. My eyes dropped to the details. Last seen, tomorrow. For a second, my brain short-circuited. Tomorrow? That didn't make sense. That wasn't possible. How could someone be missing before they vanish? My vision blurred. I blinked hard, staring again, forcing the words to change. They didn't. Last seen, tomorrow. A cold nausea rolled through my stomach. I whispered, voice cracking, "This is a joke." But there was no humor here, no prank, no audience, only silence. The kind of silence that feels like listening. My car door locks clicked suddenly, once, twice, unlocking. My head snapped down, my hand flew to the lock button. I pressed it. Nothing happened. The lock stayed open. My breathing turned frantic. The GPS screen flickered again. The black background remained. New text appeared beneath "Look up." "You're right on time." My throat tightened. Right on time for what? The missing poster fluttered again, and in that movement I noticed something else. Another poster behind it. Older, more weathered. The paper was yellowing, the edges curled. It was the same photo, the same name, but the date was different. Last seen, 3 weeks ago. My chest seized. 3 weeks ago. The trip history, completed. The repeated routes. My hands shook violently. I looked back up at the sign. Welcome back. It wasn't a greeting, it was confirmation. And as if this place had been waiting for me to remember. As if I had been here again and again. And each time I had somehow left, or escaped, or failed to finish whatever was supposed to happen. The GPS screen changed again. One line. Get out. My breath hitched. The scraping sound returned. Soft, step, scrape, step. Closer now, not beside the car anymore, behind it, circling. I turned my head sharply toward the rear window. Darkness, nothing visible. But I could feel it. Something outside the reach of the headlights, something patient. My hands trembled as they moved toward the door handle. I didn't know why. I didn't want to. But my body felt like it was moving through thick water, obeying something deeper than thought. The handle was cold. I pulled. The door creaked open. Rain-scented air rushed in. And the cold hit my face like a slap. I stepped out onto the gravel. My shoes crunched loudly, the sound shocking in the stillness. The car door hung open behind me. The engine idled. The headlights cast long beams across the clearing. Everything beyond them was swallowed whole. I stood there, breathing hard, scanning the trees. Silence, no insects, no wind. Just the faint patter of rain. The missing poster stared back at me. Tomorrow. How could tomorrow already know? My phone buzzed again in my pocket. I pulled it out with shaking fingers. The screen was still black. Only one line now. Don't turn around. My blood went cold because the footsteps behind me stopped, as if whatever was circling was now standing perfectly still, right at my back. Close enough that the air felt different. Close enough that the hair on my neck lifted. I froze, staring at the sign. Welcome back. The midpoint question burned through me like fire. How can someone be missing before they vanish? And a worse question followed immediately after. If the poster says tomorrow, then what happens tonight? Behind me, something breathed. Not mine, not the rain, something slow. Patient, waiting for me to finally turn around. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Every nerve in my body screamed that if I did, something would be confirmed, something irreversible. The words on my phone burned into my vision. Don't turn around. My breath came in sharp, broken pulls. The rain tapped softly against my jacket. The clearing felt like a stage, and I was standing in the center of it. Then, the sound behind me shifted. Not footsteps, not scraping. Something closer. A slow exhale, like breath against the air. My stomach twisted. And that was it. That was the moment my survival took over. I stumbled backward, then spun and ran. Gravel sprayed under my shoes. My hands fumbled for the car door. I threw myself inside so hard, my shoulder slammed into the frame. I yanked the door shut, locked it, hit the lock button again. My fingers were shaking so badly I could barely press anything. The engine was still running. The dashboard lights glowed warmly. For a fraction of a second I thought, I'm safe, I'm inside. I can leave. Then the GPS spoke, not calmly this time, not like a helpful assistant, like something that had been waiting. Continue forward. My voice cracked as I shouted, no! I slapped at the phone, trying to close the app. The screen didn't respond. I tried swiping up. Nothing. I held the power button down. The phone didn't shut off. It stayed lit, stubbornly alive in my hands. The map returned. The route line was there again, bright, unavoidable, leading deeper into the woods. I shook my head, whispering like a prayer, this isn't happening. This isn't happening. Then I did what any normal person would do. I tried to call for help. My fingers opened the dial pad. I hit 9, then 1, the call button. The phone paused, the screen flickered, and instead of ringing, the GPS voice came through my speaker, slow, mocking. No service. My heart hammered. I stared at the phone. I tried again. Another emergency number, another attempt, same result. The voice returned, clearer now. No service, no escape. My blood ran cold. Those weren't system words. Those weren't carrier errors. That was a message, a sentence, a decision. I screamed, stop it. The GPS didn't stop. It recalculated instantly. The route pulsed. And then, the car began to move. At first, I thought my foot slipped. Then I realized my foot wasn't on the gas. My hands tightened on the wheel. The car rolled forward anyway, slow, controlled. Like it had decided for me. Panic surged through my chest. I slammed my foot onto the brake. The pedal resisted. Not fully, just enough to feel wrong, like pressing into something that didn't want to yield. The car slowed, then kept going. The GPS voice guided me like nothing was wrong. In 500 feet, turn right. No, I shouted again. I jerked the wheel left. The car corrected itself, straightened, stayed on the route. My throat tightened with disbelief. I was driving, but I wasn't in control. The trees closed in as the road narrowed. Branches hung low over the asphalt like reaching fingers. The rain thickened, tapping faster against the windshield. My wipers squeaked back and forth, back and forth. The world outside became nothing but black trunks and blurred motion. The GPS spoke again. In 300 feet, turn right. There was no right turn, only trees, only darkness. Then, impossibly, a road appeared. A thin cut through the woods that hadn't been there a second ago. My headlights caught it just as the car turned on its own. The tires crunched onto gravel. The sound was deafening in the empty night. My breathing became ragged. My hands shook so badly the wheel felt like it was vibrating. The GPS volume rose by itself. Louder, closer. In 1,000 feet, you will arrive. Arrive. That word felt like a door closing. No, I whispered, please. The route line on the screen was straight now. No more turns, no more choices, just forward. The trees pressed closer. The road dipped. Fog began to gather low along the ground, pale and thick. And then, through the mist, I saw iron, a gate, tall, old. My black metal twisted into shapes that looked almost like vines, or ribs. The gate stood across the road like a boundary. Beyond it, the woods opened into something else, a wide, shadowed space. The car rolled closer. I spotted a sign bolted to the gate. The letters were worn, but readable. Cemetery grounds. My heart stopped. No. The GPS spoke gently, almost tender. You're almost there. The gate creaked. On its own, slowly swinging inward, inviting. The car passed through. The gravel path wound between crooked stones. Headstones rose from the earth like broken teeth. Some leaned. Some had sunk halfway into the soil. All of them looked old, forgotten. The fog curled around them, hiding the lower halves like the ground was swallowing them. The GPS voice became perfectly calm again. In 200 feet, arrive at your destination. I shook my head violently. Tears blurred my vision. This is wrong. This is wrong. The car rolled deeper. No other cars, no lights, no buildings, only graves, only names, only dates. Then I saw it. At the far end of the path, a fresh patch of earth, dark, recently turned. A single headstone stood there, cleaner than the others. New, waiting. The GPS announced almost cheerfully, arrived. The car stopped, this time completely. I sat frozen, staring through the windshield. The fresh grave sat in my headlights like a spotlight. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My voice was a whisper. No, I'm not doing this. The GPS didn't respond. The engine idled for 3 more seconds. Then, it shut off. The dashboard lights went dark. The radio died. The air vents stopped humming. Silence swallowed the car. I turned the key. Nothing. I tried again. The starter didn't even click. The car was dead. My headlights remained for 1 more heartbeat, then flickered and went out. Darkness. Total. I gasped, hands flying out as if I could push the dark away. Only the faint glow of my phone remained. My breathing sounded too loud, too human. Then the phone vibrated. 1 notification. I stared down. The GPS app was still open. The screen showed no map now, no route, no roads, just a black background, and 1 line of text. Walk the rest. My mouth went dry. My hands trembled so hard the phone nearly slipped. Walk the rest. The grave was out there, waiting, and something wanted me outside the car. I stared at the locked doors, the windows, the darkness beyond, and the question rose in my mind, sharper than fear itself. Why does it want me outside? Because whatever was guiding me, whatever had been speaking through that calm voice, had never wanted to take me home. It had only wanted one thing, to deliver me. to the place already reserved. And now, the car was no longer part of the journey. Only my feet were, only the final steps. Outside, in the cemetery fog, something shifted. Not a sound, not a footstep, just the sense that the waiting was over. The phone buzzed again, a final message. "Do not make us come get you." And then, the car door locks clicked, once, twice, unlocking, inviting, forcing. The handle moved slightly under its own weight, as if the car itself was letting go of me, as if it was done protecting me. And the grave ahead sat patiently in the dark. The phone was the only light left, a cold, artificial glow in a world that suddenly felt endless. The cemetery around me was invisible except for what that small screen could reach. The fog swallowed everything else. The rain had thinned, but the air was wet, heavy, pressing against my skin. The message stayed there. Walk the rest. My fingers were numb. My breath trembled. I whispered into the dark, voice breaking, "No, no, I'm not doing that." The phone vibrated once. The screen shifted. A flashlight icon appeared. Then, without my touch, the flashlight turned on. A thin beam of white light cut through the blackness. It landed on the inside of my car door, then slowly moved, as if the phone itself was aiming, pointing, guiding. The beam settled on the handle. My stomach twisted. The GPS voice spoke again, and softer now, almost patient. "Continue." I swallowed hard. My hand reached for the handle before I could stop it. The metal was icy. I pulled. The door opened with a long creak. Cold air poured in. The smell hit me immediately. Wet earth, old stone, leaves rotting beneath the fog, and something else, something faintly metallic, like rust. Or blood. I stepped out. Gravel crunched under my shoes. The sound echoed too loudly. The car sat behind me like a dead animal. No lights, no engine, no warmth. Just a dark shell. The phone's flashlight beam swung ahead. The cemetery emerged in pieces. Headstones, crooked, broken, half sunk into the ground. Some so old the names were worn smooth, erased by decades of rain. The fog curled low, wrapping around the stones like breath. The GPS voice came through my speaker. "In 200 feet, proceed forward." I whispered, "I don't want to." The voice didn't respond. It didn't need to. The beam of light moved again, sweeping across the path, showing me where to step. I took one step, then another. My shoes sank slightly into the soft ground. Mud clung to the edges. The cemetery was quiet in the way a place becomes quiet when it is listening. No birds, no insects, no distant highway. Only my breathing. Only the wet crunch of earth beneath my feet. The phone buzzed lightly in my hand. The flashlight beam flickered, then steadied. The GPS spoke. "Keep going." I moved between graves. The headstones passed like faces in the dark. Some had flowers long dead, their petals blackened. Some had small toys left behind, faded and broken. A child's grave, a teenager, a mother, names, lives, more endings. My throat tightened as I realized how many stories were buried here. How many people had arrived at their last destination without knowing the route ahead. The fog thickened. The beam of light seemed smaller now, like the darkness was pressing closer. The GPS voice guided me with impossible precision. "Turn left." There was no path, only headstones. But the beam swung left anyway, and when I stepped forward, I found flattened grass, a narrow trail through the graves. As if others had walked here recently. My pulse hammered. "Who's been here?" I whispered. The GPS answered almost gently. "You have." My breath caught. "No, I haven't." The voice didn't argue. It simply continued. "In 100 feet, you will arrive." Arrive. That word again, that closing door. The flashlight beam swept forward. And then it landed on fresh dirt, dark soil piled high, too clean, too new. The earth looked recently turned, still wet, still loose, a grave, open, waiting. My feet stopped moving, my entire body locked in place. The beam drifted lower, and I saw the edges of the hole, deep, black, the kind of black that doesn't reflect light. It looked like it went down forever. My stomach rolled violently. I stumbled back one step, then another. My voice was a broken whisper. No, no, no. The GPS spoke softly. This is your destination. The flashlight beam moved again, slowly, deliberately, pointing beside the open grave. Something pale stood there, a headstone. New, clean, unweathered. The stone looked wrong among the older markers, like a fresh scar. My breathing stopped. The beam climbed up the carved surface. At first, I couldn't read it. My eyes refused. Then the letters sharpened, and my blood turned to ice, my full name. First, middle, last, carved deep into the stone. I stared so hard my eyes burned. No. Below my name, a date. Today's date, not tomorrow, not weeks ago. Today. My knees nearly gave out. The flashlight trembled violently as my hands shook. The GPS voice came through again, so quiet now, almost intimate. This is where you're supposed to be. I backed away, stumbling in the mud. My heel caught on a sunken stone and I almost fell. No, I gasped. No, I'm not doing this. The fog seemed thicker around the grave, the air colder, the open earth looked hungry. Then I heard it. A sound that wasn't the rain, wasn't my breathing. A slow inhale, right behind me. Breathing. I'm close enough that I felt warmth against the back of my neck. Every muscle in my body went rigid. I couldn't move. The GPS spoke again. 2 words, flat, certain. You're late. My throat tightened so hard I couldn't swallow. Late. Late for what? My flashlight beam shook wildly, flashing across headstones, fog, dirt. The breathing behind me continued, patient, steady, not rushing, not angry, just waiting. Like someone who has been standing here for a long time, like someone who knew I would come. The GPS voice softened further, almost like a whisper. They've been waiting. My lips barely moved. Who? The breathing behind me deepened. The fog shifted, and suddenly I understood the true horror of the reserved gravesite. This wasn't about technology. This wasn't about an app glitch. This wasn't about a wrong turn. This was about something that had prepared this place. Something that had carved my name before I arrived. Something that didn't need to chase me. Because the route always led here. And now, standing at the edge of my own grave, with breath at my back, the only question left was the one that made my blood run colder than the fog itself. Who has been waiting for me in the dark? The breathing behind me was steady, close, human, too human. My body wouldn't move. My feet felt rooted in the mud at the edge of the open grave. The headstone beside it gleamed pale in the flashlight beam. My name carved into stone like a verdict. The GPS screen in my trembling hand stayed lit. Waiting. The voice didn't speak now. It didn't need to. The cemetery itself felt like it was holding its breath. I forced my eyes shut for 1 second. Just one. As if I could wake up. As if I could open them and be back on the highway. Back in the rain. Back in a normal world where maps didn't predict graves. But when I opened my eyes, the fog was still there. The grave was still open. The breathing behind me was still happening. And the cold truth remained. Something was standing at my back. My fingers tightened around the phone. The flashlight beam shook wildly, slicing across the headstone, the dirt, the fog. My voice came out broken. Who are you? The breathing paused. Then, A voice answered, not from the GPS, not from the phone. From behind me, low, quiet, almost familiar. You already know. My stomach dropped. That voice, it wasn't a stranger's. It wasn't deep or distorted. It wasn't some monster in the dark. It sounded like me. A cold wave rushed through my body. I turned, slowly. The flashlight beam swung with my movement. The fog parted just enough, and I saw him, standing a few feet away. A figure in the mist, same height, same build, same outline. At first, my mind refused to connect the pieces. It tried to make it someone else, anyone else. But the beam lifted and landed on his face, my eyes, my expression, except something was wrong. His skin looked drained. His clothes were soaked with mud, dark streaks across his sleeves. His hands were filthy, wet earth caked under the fingernails, and in his grip was a shovel. The metal edge glinted faintly, fresh dirt clung to it. My mouth opened, no sound came out. My heart hammered so violently it hurt. The other me stared calmly, like this was overdue, like this was routine, like he had been standing here for hours, waiting for me to finally arrive. He tilted his head slightly, then spoke, soft, almost disappointed. You finally followed the route. My knees nearly buckled. No, this isn't real. The double's eyes didn't blink. It's real. His voice was steady. I'm too steady, like someone who had already accepted what this place was. I backed away, stumbling, nearly falling into the open grave. The dirt crumbled under my heel. I caught myself gasping. The other me didn't move. He didn't rush me. He didn't need to. He simply stood there with the shovel, calm as a worker at the end of a shift. My voice cracked. What is this? The double glanced toward the headstone, toward my name, toward today's date, then back to me. It brought you back. My throat tightened. Back? I've never been here. The double's mouth twitched, not a smile, something colder. Yes, you have. The GPS in my hand buzzed. The screen lit up with a single line. Memory restored. I froze, my vision blurred. What? The double stepped closer, mud squelched beneath his boots. Each step was slow, deliberate. You don't remember, he said. That's the only reason you could live with it. My breath came in sharp bursts. Live with what? The double's gaze flicked to the grave, the open earth, waiting. Then he whispered, what you did. The words hit me like a physical blow. My head shook violently. No, but the cemetery felt suddenly familiar. The fog, the stones, the smell of wet soil, a pressure built behind my eyes, a dull ache in my skull, like something trapped inside was pushing to be seen. The GPS voice returned, soft as a lullaby. Play back. The world lurched, and then a flash, not a thought, not imagination, a memory, sharp, violent. My hands gripping the same shovel, breathing hard, rain pouring down, a figure on the ground, someone struggling, a muffled sound, pleading, my own voice shouting. Then silence, another flash, dragging something heavy through the mud. The cemetery gates open, not by themselves, by me, my flashlight beam sweeping across headstones, not lost, not afraid, purposeful. Another flash, the grave being dug, dirt flying, my arms burning with effort, my breath steaming in the cold, and then the body, a shape wrapped in something dark, a hand slipping out, still, lifeless. My stomach turned violently. I gagged, the memory slammed deeper, the earth falling, thud after thud, covering, hiding, burying. My own sobbing voice whispering, no one can know. The flash ended. I staggered backward, choking on air. Tears streamed down my face. My hands trembled uncontrollably. The double watched me with quiet certainty. You left, he said. You drove away. You told yourself it never happened. My voice was barely audible. I didn't. The double's eyes hardened. You did. I looked at the grave again, the open hole, the fresh dirt. And suddenly I realized something worse. This grave. It wasn't dug for me, not originally. It was dug by me, for someone else. My chest tightened to the point of pain. The GPS wasn't predicting my death. It wasn't guiding me to my burial. And it was guiding me back, to the place where I had buried a secret. The double lifted the shovel slightly, mud dripped from its edge. His voice lowered. You thought forgetting would save you. My lips trembled. Who was it? The double didn't answer. He didn't need to, because the answer was already clawing its way up from the dirt in my mind. A name, a face, a moment. The reason. The double stepped closer until he was only inches away. I could see every detail of myself in him, except his eyes. His eyes looked empty, like a person who had crossed a line and never returned. He whispered, "The GPS never led you to your grave." He leaned slightly toward the open earth. It led you back to where you became something else. The shovel tilted toward the hole. The fog thickened around us, and the twist settled over me like a burial cloth. I wasn't the victim of the route. I was the reason the route existed. The GPS wasn't hunting me. It was reminding me, bringing me back. Because monsters don't always wait in the dark woods. Sometimes, they're the ones holding the shovel. And as the other version of me stared down into the grave, one final question echoed louder than the GPS ever could. Was I the one being buried, or the one who buried someone first? My breath was coming apart. My mind was splintering under the weight of what I had just seen. The grave, the shovel, the other me. The memories that weren't memories anymore, but truth. I staggered back, shaking my head violently, as if I could throw the images out. No. The double didn't chase. He didn't have to. He simply stood there, half swallowed by fog, holding the shovel like it belonged in his hands. Like it always had. His voice was quiet, certain. You can run again. A pause. But you'll still come back. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. I'm not you, I whispered. The double's eyes didn't blink. You are. The GPS buzzed in my hand. The screen glowed brighter. One final line appeared. Route complete. My stomach dropped. Complete. No, it couldn't be complete. Not here. Not like this. My fingers loosened. The phone slipped. It hit the mud with a wet thud. The flashlight beam spun wildly across headstones, dirt, fog, then pointed straight up into nothing. For a moment, the cemetery was lit in fragments, like broken frames of film. Then the beam went still. My hands were empty. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I turned and ran. My shoes tore through wet grass. Mud sucked at my soles. Headstones blurred past like crooked teeth. The fog wrapped around me, cold and thick. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. Anywhere but there. Anywhere but the grave with my name on it. Behind me, I heard nothing. No footsteps, no pursuit. Just the sound of my own breathing. And the wet slap of my feet against the ground. The cemetery felt endless. Every direction looked the same. Stones, trees, mist, darkness. I stumbled, nearly falling over a sunken marker. My hands shot out, catching myself on cold stone. My fingers brushed carved letters, a name I couldn't read, a date that meant nothing. All of it meant nothing compared to the one thing burned into my mind, today. My name, my grave. I kept running. The iron gate appeared suddenly through the fog, like it had been waiting. I burst through it, lungs screaming. The gravel road beyond was narrow, barely visible. My car. I needed my car. I needed movement, distance, reality. I ran until my legs shook. until my chest felt like it would split open. And then, there it was. The car sat exactly where I left it. A dark shape against darker trees. For a moment, hope surged through me, and I fumbled for the door handle, pulled, it opened. I threw myself inside. My hands flew to the ignition. I twisted the key. Nothing, not even a click. My breath turned frantic. No, 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 come on. I tried again. Still nothing. The car was dead. A cold shell. A trap. I slammed my palms against the steering wheel. My voice cracked into a sob. Please. Outside the windows, fog pressed close. The cemetery gate stood behind me like a mouth that had already swallowed me once. Then, from somewhere in the darkness, my phone spoke, not from my hand, not from the car, from the mud, from the cemetery, from everywhere. The GPS voice, calm and automatic, carried through the night. Recalculating. My blood turned to ice. I whispered, "No." The voice continued, unhurried, as if nothing had happened. As if this was just another late-night drive. As if graves were ordinary destinations. Recalculating. The fog outside shifted, the trees seemed to lean, the silence felt alive again. Then the GPS voice spoke one more time, clear, cold, final. Next destination, a pause, and in that pause my heart stopped. You're home. The words didn't make sense at first. My home. Why would it take me home now? Then understanding hit like a knife. Home wasn't safety. Home was the next stop on the loop. Home was where this began, where I forgot, where I lived like nothing happened. Home was where the monster wore my face in daylight. My lips trembled. No. Outside the car, somewhere beyond the fog, a faint scraping sound returned. Slow, patient, like footsteps on gravel, like someone walking with purpose. I'm not rushing, never rushing. Because the route was already set. The GPS voice spoke again, softer now, almost pleased. Continue forward. My hands covered my ears. Stop. But the voice didn't stop. It never would. Because it wasn't just an app. It wasn't just a map. It was a reminder. A guide back to the truth. And that's when I understood the real horror. It wasn't that the GPS knew where I would die. It was that it knew where I had already killed. The fog pressed against the windshield like breath. The darkness outside felt full, not empty. Full, waiting. I whispered, barely audible, "If your GPS ever reroutes you late at night." My throat tightened, tears spilling. "Don't follow it." A long pause, my voice dropped into something smaller than fear. Because sometimes, it isn't taking you somewhere. It's taking you back, the GPS voice whispered from the darkness. One last line, 2 words, so quiet they felt like they came from inside my own skull. Welcome back. The screen went black, silence, and somewhere in the dark, the route began again.